It was just another Tuesday afternoon. Nothing fancy, nothing planned. The kind of day most folks wouldn't remember by next week. The sun hung low in the Atlanta sky, casting that golden hour glow over gas stations, strip malls, and the occasional patch of tired grass trying its best between sidewalks. Michael Big Shaq Thompson wasn't thinking about fame or cameras or even his next verse. He was thinking about a cheeseburger. He'd spent the morning hauling boxes of school supplies to a community center on the south side, laughing with teenagers who called him Uncle Shaq, even though he wasn't anyone's uncle. He liked that. It meant he belonged somewhere real, not just in comment sections or trending reels. By early afternoon, his stomach growled loud enough to drown out the radio, so he swung by the McDonald's off Moreland Avenue, the one with the slightly sticky booth seats and the cashier who always remembered his order. The place buzzed with the usual after-school crowd. Kids in backpacks too big for their shoulders argued over ketchup packets. A tired-looking woman rocked a stroller with one hand while balancing a tray with the other. The air smelled like warm fries, plastic toys, and the faint tang of cleaning spray someone had used an hour too late. Big Shaq ordered his usual double cheeseburger, large fries, sweet tea, and wandered toward the soda machine to kill a minute while his food was bagged. That's when he felt it. A tug. Soft, almost shy, like someone testing whether they were allowed to ask for help. He turned. Standing there was a little boy, couldn't have been more than 5, wearing a Spider-Man hoodie 2 sizes too big. The sleeve swallowed his hands and one knee of his jeans was scuffed like he'd taken a spill recently. But it wasn't the clothes that caught Big Shaq's attention. It was the eyes, wide, glassy. Not scared in the way kids get when they lose a balloon, but scared like he'd seen something he shouldn't have. Something that didn't belong in a place with plastic Happy Meal toys and cartoon mascots on the walls. "Hey, buddy," Big Shaq said, crouching down so they were eye level. His voice came out softer than he expected. "You lost?" The boy didn't answer right away. He glanced over his shoulder toward the front windows, then back at Big Shaq. His lower lip trembled just once. Then, so quiet it was nearly lost under the clatter of trays and the hum of the ice machine, he whispered, "My daddy's hurting my mommy again." The words landed like a stone in still water. Big Shaq didn't flinch, didn't gasp, but inside something shifted. He'd grown up in neighborhoods where silence was survival, where mind your business wasn't just advice, it was armor. He'd heard things through thin walls as a kid, shouts, thuds, crying that got quieter and quieter until it disappeared. And he remembered how no one ever knocked, no one ever asked. Everyone just pretended the noise wasn't there, but this wasn't then. And this wasn't someone else's problem. He kept his face calm, his voice steady. "Is your mom okay right now?" The boy nodded fast, too fast. "She said we could get fries if I stayed quiet." He hugged himself, arms wrapping tight around his small frame. "But she's crying in the car, and Daddy's yelling at her not to move." Big Shaq's stomach twisted. He followed the boy's gaze out the window. Parked near the far end of the lot was a dark sedan, windows tinted just enough to hide what was inside. The engine was still running. A shadow moved behind the wheel. "Did you come here together?" Big Shaq asked gently. The boy nodded again. "Mommy said she needed food, but Daddy said no. Then he got mad. Then she drove real fast and came here." He sniffled, wiping his nose with the back of his oversized sleeve. "She told me to go in and get a toy. But I saw you and you looked nice." Big Shaq's chest tightened. Not because of the compliment, but because this kid, barely old enough to tie his shoes, had already learned to read faces, to judge who might help and who might walk away. That wasn't childhood. That was survival dressed up as innocence. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a clean napkin, McDonald's logo printed in red, and handed it to the boy. "What's your name?" The boy hesitated, then whispered, "Leo." "All right, Leo," Big Shaq said, keeping his tone light but firm. "I'm gonna get you a juice box, okay? And maybe a cookie if they've got any left. You sit right here at that booth by the window, the one with the sun shining through. Can you do that for me?" Leo nodded, eyes never leaving Big Shaq's face, like he was memorizing it in case he needed to find him again. Big Shaq walked to the counter, ordered a juice box and a chocolate chip cookie, and asked the cashier, Lena, he remembered her name, to keep an eye on the kid in the Spider-Man hoodie. "Don't let anyone approach him," he said quietly. Not even if they say they're family, just watch him for 2 minutes. Lena, who'd worked there 10 years and seen everything from breakups to birthday parties, gave a single nod. She didn't ask questions. She just glanced toward Leo, then back at Big Shaq and said, "He's safe here." He believed her. But as he turned back toward the booth, his mind raced. Calling 911 felt huge. What if he was wrong? What if it was just a bad argument, the kind every couple has? But then he remembered Leo's hands, how they shook when he spoke. How he kept glancing at the door like he expected someone to burst in. How he said again. That word changed everything. This wasn't a one-time thing. This was a pattern. And right now, somewhere in that idling car, a woman might be bleeding, bruised, or worse, trapped with no way out except the 5-year-old who dared to whisper for help. Big Shaq took a breath. He wasn't a cop. He wasn't a social worker. He was just a guy who rapped for fun and volunteered on weekends. But sometimes being human means stepping in when the world expects you to look away. He pulled out his phone, walked toward the restroom hallway, quiet, out of sight, dialed 3 numbers, and waited. Outside, the sedan's engine rumbled. Inside, Leo sipped his juice box, eyes fixed on the door, waiting to see if the nice man would come back. He did. But this time he wasn't just bringing fries. He was bringing hope. The moment Big Shaq crouched back down beside Leo, the boy's whole body seemed to exhale. It wasn't a dramatic sigh, just a tiny release of tension in his shoulders, like he'd been holding his breath since they left the apartment. He clutched the juice box with both hands, the straw poking out between his fingers like a lifeline. Big Shaq didn't say anything right away. He just sat on the edge of the booth, one knee bent, giving Leo space but staying close enough that the boy could see him, really see him, and know he wasn't going anywhere. "Your mom's gonna be okay," Big Shaq said finally, voice low but certain. He didn't promise it like a magic spell. He said it like a fact he was helping make true. Leo looked up, eyes searching. "How do you know?" "Because help is on the way," Big Shaq said. "And because you were brave enough to say something, that matters more than you know." The boy swallowed hard, then whispered, "Daddy says I talk too much." Big Shaq's jaw tightened, but he kept his expression soft. "Sometimes talking is the bravest thing you can do." He glanced toward the front windows again. The dark sedan was still there, engine idling, exhaust curling faintly in the afternoon air. No one had gotten out. No angry man storming in. But that didn't mean danger had passed. If anything, the stillness felt heavier, like the calm before, a storm that never quite breaks but just lingers, waiting. "Tell me about your mom," Big Shaq said gently, keeping his tone light, like they were just 2 guys killing time over fries. "What's her favorite thing to eat?" Leo thought for a second. "Pancakes, with strawberries, but we don't have those much." He paused, then added quietly, "She sings when she makes them, even when she's sad." Big Shaq nodded. "That's beautiful." She says singing makes the bad feelings smaller. A lump rose in Big Shaq's throat. He'd met plenty of tough people in his life. Boxers, street poets, single parents working 3 jobs. But few had the quiet courage of a woman who sang through her pain just to give her child a moment of peace. "Did something happen last night?" he asked, careful not to push too hard. Leo nodded, eyes dropping to his juice box. "It was loud, like when the thunder hits the roof." He mimicked a crash with his hands, then quickly pulled them back into his sleeves. "Mommy told me to stay in my room and count to 100. But I heard glass break, and then she didn't come check on me like she always does." He looked up again, voice barely above a whisper. "She never forgets." Big Shaq reached out, not to touch, but just to rest his hand on the table between them, a silent anchor. "You did the right thing coming in here, and you did the right thing talking to me." Leo's lower lip quivered. "What if Daddy gets mad at her because of me?" "He won't," Big Shaq said firmly. "Not anymore." He meant it, not as a guess, but as a line drawn in the sand. Things were changing now, whether the man in the car liked it or not. Just then, Lena the cashier walked over with a small paper bag. "Found a cookie in the back," she said. placing it gently in front of Leo. Her eyes flicked to Big Shaq, then to the parking lot. "Still out there," she murmured. Big Shaq gave a small nod of thanks. "Appreciate you watching him." Lena lingered for a second, then said quietly, "I've got 2 boys. If that were mine." She didn't finish. She didn't need to. As she walked away, Leo unwrapped the cookie with careful fingers. "She's nice," he said. "Yeah," Big Shaq agreed. "People are nicer than you think, when you let them be." They sat in silence for a moment, the sounds of the restaurant, wrapping around them like background noise in a movie, laughter ice clinking, the fryer hissing. Normal life, happening all around a moment that was anything but normal. Then Leo asked, "Are you a police officer?" Big Shaq almost smiled. "Nah, I just help where I can." "You're big," Leo said, studying him. "Like a superhero." That one hit harder than expected. Big Shaq shook his head. "Nah, buddy. Real heroes are the ones who keep going even when they're scared. Like your mom. Like you." Before Leo could respond, Big Shaq's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out. A text from the 911 dispatcher. "Units en route. ETA 4 minutes. Stay inside. Do not engage." He read it twice, then tucked the phone away. 4 minutes. It felt like forever, and no time at all. "What's happening?" Leo asked, sensing the shift. "Help's coming," Big Shaq said. "Real help. Police. They're gonna make sure your mom is safe." Leo's eyes widened. "Will they take Daddy away?" Big Shaq chose his words carefully. "They'll make sure everyone stays safe. That's what matters." He didn't sugarcoat it, but he didn't terrify the boy either. Truth, but with care, that was the balance. Outside, the sedan's engine revved slightly. Big Shaq's muscles tensed. He subtly shifted his body, angling himself between Leo and the entrance just in case. But the car didn't move. Just sat there, humming like a predator pretending to sleep. Leo noticed too. He slid closer to Big Shaq on the bench. "He's looking," he whispered. "Let him look," Big Shaq said calmly. "We're safe in here." And for the first time since Leo had tugged his sleeve, the boy leaned into him, just a little, like he finally believed it. Minutes ticked by. A family left, laughing about spilled milk. A teenager snapped a selfie by the play place. Life kept moving. But in that booth, time felt thick, stretched thin by waiting. Then, sirens. Faint at first, then louder, cutting through the afternoon like a blade. 2 police cruisers rounded the corner, lights flashing but silent now, rolling slowly into the lot. Big Shaq exhaled. "There they are." Leo pressed his face against the window, eyes wide. "Are they gonna help Mommy?" "They already are," Big Shaq said. One officer approached the sedan. Another moved toward the restaurant entrance. Big Shaq stood slowly, holding up a hand in a calm, open gesture as the officer stepped inside. "Sir," the officer said, voice professional but not cold. "Dispatch said you called about a domestic situation?" Big Shaq nodded toward Leo. "The boy came in alone. Said his dad was hurting his mom. They're in the dark sedan out front. Mom's still in the car, I believe." The officer's expression didn't change, but his posture shifted, alert, focused. He radioed his partner, giving a quick update. Then he crouched near Leo, voice softening. "Hey there, I'm Officer Diaz. You did a really good thing today." Leo didn't answer, but he didn't shrink away either. He just held his juice box like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. Big Shaq stayed close, not as a witness, but as a presence. Someone who'd seen the fear in Leo's eyes before the uniforms arrived. Someone who'd chosen to believe a whisper over silence. Outside, the man in the sedan stepped out, hands raised, arguing loudly. But the officers moved with calm authority, separating him from the vehicle. Moments later, another officer helped a woman from the passenger seat. She moved slowly, one arm cradled against her chest, face streaked with tears, but her eyes locked onto the restaurant window. On Leo, Big Shaq gently touched the boy's shoulder. "Look, Leo turned, and when he saw his mom, alive, walking, looking right at him, his whole face changed. Not with joy, not yet, but with relief so deep it looked like pain. She mouthed 2 words through the glass. "Thank you." Not to the police, not to the sky, to him. And in that moment, Big Shaq understood. This wasn't about being a hero. It was about being human enough to listen when the world expects you to tune out, to care when it's easier not to sit with a scared kid in a McDonald's booth and say, "I've got you, even if you've never met before." The sirens faded into the distance as backup units arrived. Social workers would come next. Interviews, paperwork, healing that would take longer than a fast food meal. But right now, in this ordinary place on an ordinary Tuesday, something extraordinary had happened. A whisper had been heard, and because of it, a family had a chance to breathe again. Big Shaq didn't plan to be part of what came next. He'd made the call, stayed with the boy, and watched as officers moved with quiet urgency outside. But just as he thought his role was done, just as he started to step back, hands in his pockets, ready to slip away like he'd never been there, an officer approached him again, this time with a different look in his eyes. "Sir," the officer said, voice lower now, "we need you to stay a few more minutes. Your statement matters." Big Shaq nodded. Of course it did. This wasn't just a story anymore, it was evidence. And Leo's mom, still standing by the cruiser with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, kept glancing toward the booth like she was afraid Big Shaq might vanish before she could thank him properly. Inside the restaurant, things had quieted. The after-school rush had faded, replaced by the slow hum of cleanup. Employees wiping tables, restocking napkin dispensers, humming along to the radio. Leo sat at the same booth now with a social worker beside him. A kind-faced woman with silver streaks in her hair and a voice that sounded like warm milk. She didn't bombard him with questions. She just sat, offered a second cookie, and let him talk when he was ready. Big Shaq hung back near the soda machine, giving them space. But his mind wouldn't slow down. He kept replaying the whisper. The way Leo's fingers trembled around the juice box. The look in his eyes when he said again. It wasn't just about today. It was about every day before it, and every day that could have come after if no one had listened. A few minutes later, the officer returned with a small notepad. "Mind if we go over what happened? From the beginning?" Big Shaq agreed. They moved to a corner table away from Leo. He spoke slowly, carefully, about the tug on his sleeve, the words the boy whispered, the dark sedan idling outside. He didn't add drama. He didn't exaggerate. He just told it like it was. A child in pain, a man who chose to stop walking. As he talked, another officer escorted Leo's mom inside. She moved like someone who'd been carrying a weight for too long, shoulders hunched, steps cautious. But her eyes were clear now, focused. She spotted Big Shaq immediately and walked over, stopping just a few feet away. "Thank you," she said, voice raw but steady. I didn't think anyone would believe him. Or me." Big Shaq shook his head. "You don't have to thank me. He's the brave one." She looked toward her son, now coloring quietly with the social worker. "He's been so quiet lately, like he's trying not to take up space." She swallowed hard. "I thought if I just kept cooking, kept cleaning, kept smiling, maybe it would stop. But it never does it?" "No," Big Shaq said gently. "It doesn't stop until someone says enough." She nodded, tears welling but not falling. Today I finally drove away. I didn't plan to, I just couldn't go back inside that apartment after what happened last night." She glanced out the window at the sedan, now empty, its doors open like a confession. "I told Leo we were getting fries. But really I was just trying to breathe." Big Shaq didn't offer empty comfort. "No, everything will be fine or it'll all work out." Instead, he said, "You're safe now." "And so is he." She let out a shaky breath. "For the first time in a long time, I believe that." Just then, the social worker stood and walked over. "We're going to take Leo and his mom to a safe location tonight," she explained to Big Shaq. "Temporary housing, medical check, counseling. They'll be looked after." Big Shaq nodded. "Good." The woman hesitated, then added, "Would you be willing to share your contact info? Not for the police, for them. If they ever want to say thank you, or just know someone cared." He thought about it. He wasn't looking for recognition. But he also knew that sometimes for people coming out of darkness, knowing one good person exists can be the thread that keeps them from slipping back. "Yeah," he said. "Yeah, I'd be okay with that." He scribbled his number on a clean napkin, the same kind with the red McDonald's logo, and handed it to Leo's mom. She folded it carefully and tucked it into her pocket like it was something precious. Outside, the sun dipped lower, painting the parking lot in long shadows. The police had finished their initial sweep. The man, the father, was already in the back of a cruiser, head down, silent now. No shouting. No excuses. Just the quiet shame of being seen. Big Shaq watched as Leo stood up, holding his mom's hand. She knelt and whispered something in his ear. He nodded, then turned and walked, slowly, deliberately, toward Big Shaq. He stopped just in front of him, looked up and said, "You didn't leave." Big Shaq crouched again. "I said I'd stay, didn't I?" Leo nodded. Then, without warning, he wrapped his small arms around Big Shaq's neck in a quick, tight hug. It lasted maybe 3 seconds, but it felt like a lifetime of trust packed into one gesture. When he pulled back, he said, "My mom says you're an angel." Big Shaq chuckled softly. "Nah, buddy. Just a guy who happened to be in the right place." But as Leo walked back to his mom, hand in hers, Big Shaq knew it wasn't just about being in the right place. It was about choosing to act when it would have been easier to look away. To assume someone else would handle it. To tell himself it wasn't his business. That's what so many people do. They hear the whispers, the quiet cries for help hidden in plain sight, and they walk on telling themselves it's not their problem. But today, Big Shaq hadn't walked on. And because of that, a mother got a second chance. A boy got to keep his childhood. As the social worker guided them toward a waiting car, Leo turned one last time and waved. Big Shaq waved back, heart full in a way he couldn't explain. The officer closed his notepad. "You did good today," he said simply. Big Shaq just nodded. "Hope it's enough." "It is," the officer said. "For them, it's everything." Later, long after the lot emptied and the golden light turned to dusk, Big Shaq finally walked out to his own car. His cheeseburger sat forgotten in the bag, cold now. He didn't care. He drove home in silence, windows down, letting the evening air wash over him. He didn't post about it online. Didn't call a friend to brag. He just sat on his porch when he got home, staring at the stars, thinking about how one small voice, barely louder than a breath, had changed everything. And somewhere, in a quiet shelter with clean sheets and a locked door, a little boy slept without flinching at every sound. His mom sat nearby, watching him breathe, finally able to do the same. No one would make a movie about this day. No headlines, no viral clips. But in the quiet spaces between sirens and paperwork and healing, something real had happened. A whisper had been heard, and because one man chose to listen, a family began to find their way back to light. In the days that followed, the story started to ripple outward, not in the flashy, headline-grabbing way people expect, but in the quiet, steady way real change usually happens. A local news station picked it up after a tip from a McDonald's employee. They didn't splash it across the evening broadcast with dramatic music. Instead, they ran a short segment during the community spotlight. Local man steps in after child's plea for help at fast food restaurant. There was no footage of the incident, just a blurred photo of the parking lot, a voiceover, and a brief interview with the officer who responded. Big Shaq wasn't named directly. They called him a concerned citizen, which made him smile when he heard it. That's all he'd ever wanted to be. But even without his name attached, people started connecting the dots. Someone recognized his voice from the viral rap freestyle that had bounced around the internet years back. A few fans posted guesses online, but Big Shaq stayed silent. He didn't correct them. He didn't deny it. He just kept living his life, running errands, showing up at the youth center, grabbing coffee at the same corner shop where the barista knew how he liked his oat milk. What surprised him most wasn't the attention. It was the messages. Not from strangers asking for clout, but from people who'd been where Leo's mom had been. One woman wrote, "I stayed quiet for 7 years. I wish someone had heard my son the way you heard that little boy." Another said, "My brother walked away from his family because no one ever told him it was okay to leave." These weren't grand declarations. They were whispers of their own, sent into the void hoping someone would catch them. Big Shaq read everyone. And though he didn't reply publicly, he saved them in a folder on his phone titled Remember Why. Meanwhile, Leo and his mom settled into a temporary shelter run by a local nonprofit. It wasn't fancy, shared kitchen, thin walls, a curfew, but it was safe. No shouting, no broken glass. No need to count to 100 and hope the noise would stop. For the first time in years, bedtime meant stories, not silence. Mornings meant pancakes with strawberry jam from the donation pantry, and Leo's mom actually sang while she made them. A caseworker visited twice a week. Not to interrogate, but to listen, to help them fill out forms for housing assistance, medical care, school transfers. Leo started seeing a counselor who used puppets and drawing to help him talk about feelings too big for words. At first, he drew only dark scribbles, angry lines, closed doors, stick figures with X's over their mouths. But slowly, color crept in. A yellow sun, a blue car, a tall figure with a big smile labeled the man who helped. His mom began attending support group meetings. She sat in the back at first, arms crossed, saying little, but week by week she leaned forward, shared her story, heard others, realized she wasn't weak for leaving. She was strong for surviving long enough to choose something different. One afternoon, about 3 weeks after the McDonald's visit, Big Shaq got a call from an unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him swipe green. "Hello?" a soft voice said. He recognized it right away. "It's me," Leo's mom said. I wasn't sure if you'd pick up." "I'm glad I did," he said. They talked for nearly 20 minutes, not about the incident, not about the legal case still winding its way through the system, but about Leo, how he'd started laughing again, how he asked every day if they could go see the big man, how he'd drawn a picture of the two of them, eating fries under a rainbow, and insisted it be taped to the fridge. "He says you're his hero," she said, voice warm but tinged with guilt. "I keep telling him heroes don't wear hoodies and eat fast food." Big Shaq laughed. "Tell him heroes come in all shapes, even ones who forget to take the pickles off their burger." There was a pause. Then she said, "Would it be okay if we saw you? Just for a few minutes? He misses you." Big Shaq didn't hesitate. Yeah, that'd be all right." They met at a small city park, neutral ground, open space, benches under oak trees. Leo spotted him first and came running, sneakers slapping the pavement, Spider-Man hoodie flapping behind him like a cape. He didn't say anything, just threw his arms around Big Shaq's waist and held on tight. His mom hung back smiling, eyes glistening. "He's been practicing what to say to you for days," she whispered as Big Shaq ruffled Leo's hair. They sat on a bench, sharing a bag of chips Leo had picked out himself. No agenda, no cameras, just 3 people enjoying an ordinary afternoon that felt extraordinary, because it was possible at all. "You look happier," Big Shaq said gently to Leo's mom. She nodded. "I feel like I can breathe again. Like I'm not waiting for the next storm." Leo tugged Big Shaq's sleeve. "Do you still like cheeseburgers?" "Always," Big Shaq said. "Good," Leo said seriously. "Because when I grow up, I'm gonna buy you 100 of them." Big Shaq grinned. "Deal." As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the grass, a woman walking her dog paused and gave them a small smile. No one stared. No one pointed. To the outside world, they were just 3 people on a bench, nothing remarkable. But they knew better. Back home that night, Big Shaq didn't post a photo. Didn't write a caption about kindness or courage. He just sat on his porch again, this time with a cup of tea, thinking about how healing doesn't happen in a single moment. It happens in the spaces between. The quiet mornings, the shared snacks, the hugs that say more than words ever could. The legal process would take months. Counseling would continue. Trust would be rebuilt slowly, like stitching a torn shirt thread by thread. But none of that mattered as much as this. Leo slept through the night. His mom looked in the mirror and recognized herself again. And a man who once rapped for laughs now understood that the most powerful thing he'd ever done was simply stop and listen. The world kept turning. Cars passed. Birds called. Life moved on. But in that small corner of the city, something had shifted. Not because of fame or force, but because one child whispered and one man chose to believe him. And sometimes that's enough to change everything. Months had passed since that Tuesday afternoon at the McDonald's. The kind of time that slips by quietly when you're not watching, but leaves everything different in its wake. Big Shaq hadn't returned to that location since. Not out of fear or discomfort, but because life had simply moved forward, carrying him in its current like everyone else. He still dropped off supplies at the youth center, still freestyled on his porch for no one but the neighbor's cat, still ordered cheeseburgers, though now he sometimes ate them alone, sometimes with friends, never with the weight of that day pressing on his chest. But then came a text, just 3 words. He asked for you. It was from Leo's mom. No last name, no formal greeting, just those words and a photo attached. In it, Leo stood in a doorway, grinning wide, one hand holding up a brand new pair of bright blue soccer cleats, the other giving a thumbs up. He looked taller, lighter, like someone had finally turned on a light inside him and let it stay on. Big Shaq stared at the photo for a long time. Then he typed back, "When?" She replied, "And tomorrow. Same place, p.m. He's been saving his allowance for fries." He smiled. Of course he had. The next day, he pulled into the McDonald's parking lot not as a hero, not as a viral footnote, but as a man keeping a promise to a kid who'd trusted him when trust was the hardest thing to give. The lot looked the same faded lines, the same flickering sign, the same smell of grease and summer heat rising off the asphalt. But everything felt different, lighter, like the air itself had exhaled. Inside, Leo was already there, sitting in the booth by the window, the same one. He spotted Big Shaq the second he walked in and jumped up, cleats squeaking on the tile. No hesitation this time. Just a full-speed run and a tackle hug that nearly knocked Big Shaq off balance. "You came," Leo said, beaming. "Told you I would," Big Shaq said, ruffling his hair. It was shorter now, neatly trimmed, no longer hiding his eyes. Leo's mom followed more slowly, carrying 2 trays. She looked different too, not just healthier, but settled. Her shoulders weren't hunched anymore. Her smile reached her eyes. She wore a simple yellow dress and no makeup, and she looked more beautiful than anyone in a magazine. "Thanks for coming," she said, setting the trays down. "He's been talking about this all week." They slid into the booth, Leo in the middle, Big Shaq on one side, his mom on the other. Fries, burgers, apple slices, and 2 chocolate milkshakes sat between them. No rush, no agenda. Just food and time and the kind of easy silence that only exists between people who've been through something real together. "You like my cleats?" Leo asked, stretching out one foot under the table. "Sharp," Big Shaq said. "You playing soccer now?" "Starting next week." "Coach says I'm fast." Leo's eyes sparkled. "Mom says maybe you'll come watch my first game." Big Shaq glanced at Leo's mom. She gave a small, hopeful nod. "I wouldn't miss it," he said. They ate in comfortable quiet for a while, the kind that only comes when you don't have to prove anything to each other. Leo chattered about school, how he'd made a volcano for science, how his best friend let him borrow a comic book, how he'd finally beaten level 10 in his favorite video game. Normal kid stuff. The kind of things every child should get to talk about without looking over their shoulder. At one point, Leo leaned in and whispered, "I don't have nightmares anymore." Big Shaq didn't make a big deal of it. Just nodded and said, "That's good, buddy." "It's 'cause I know she's safe now," Leo added, glancing at his mom. "And 'cause you listened." His mom reached across the table and squeezed Leo's hand. No words needed. Later, as they finished their shakes, Big Shaq asked gently, "How are you doing?" "Really," she took a breath. "Better than I thought possible. We've got an apartment now, small but ours. I start a new job next month at the community library. Part-time, but it's a start," she smiled. "And Leo's in counseling, but he calls it talking time. Says it helps him feel less tangled." Big Shaq nodded. Healing wasn't a straight line, but it was happening. Before they left, Leo pulled something from his backpack, a folded piece of construction paper. He handed it to Big Shaq with both hands like it was a sacred offering. It was a drawing. Crayon on bright red paper. In the center stood a tall figure with big arms and a wide smile, labeled Big Shaq. Next to him was a smaller figure in a Spider-Man hoodie, holding his hand. Above them, in wobbly letters, it read, "You heard me." Big Shaq's throat tightened. He folded it carefully and tucked it into his jacket pocket, right over his heart. "Best gift I've ever gotten," he said. Leo beamed. As they walked out to the parking lot, the sun warm on their backs, Leo skipped ahead, showing off his cleats on the pavement. His mom hung back with Big Shaq for a moment. "You didn't have to stay involved," she said quietly. Most people wouldn't have. I didn't do it for thanks, he said. I did it because it was right. She looked at him, really looked at him. You gave us a chance to start over. That's not just right, that's rare. They reached her car. Leo was already buckled in, waving through the window. Big Shaq leaned down to the open window. See you at the game? Leo nodded fast. You're sitting in the front row. Wouldn't dream of being anywhere else. As the car pulled away, Big Shaq stood there for a long time, watching until it turned the corner and disappeared. He didn't feel like a hero. He didn't feel famous. He just felt human, and maybe that was the point. That night, back on his porch, he pulled the drawing from his pocket and smoothed it out on his knee. The colors were bright. The lines were sure. No shadows. No closed doors. Just two figures side by side under a sun that took up half the page. He thought about all the times he'd scrolled past news stories about violence, about kids who didn't get help in time, about neighbors who heard but said nothing. He used to feel helpless, but now he knew. You don't need a badge or a title to make a difference. You just need to stop. Listen. Care. The world wouldn't remember this story. No documentaries. No awards, but Leo would. His mom would. And that was enough. Because real change doesn't happen in stadiums or on screens. It happens in booths at McDonald's, in whispered words, in juice boxes and cleats and drawings made with love, and sometimes, if you're lucky, it happens because you chose to believe a child when he said, "My daddy's hurting my mommy." Big Shaq folded the drawing again, placed it back in his pocket, and leaned back in his chair. Somewhere down the street, a kid laughed. A dog barked. Life went on, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like it was going in the right direction.